Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're located on the earth. It is now time for another edition of the PulseWave Report with yours truly, Dex, the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan. Coming to you live from PulseWaveTrading.com, home of the world famous PulseWave Price Trigger Reports. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Monday, the start of a brand new week. And we do have some interesting things to talk about. First and foremost, you need to smash the like button. Go ahead and hook me up. We have a situation that is going on right now as we are kicking off 2021. And one of those issues is that we are seeing the collapse of the USA accelerate. It is a collapse that is taking place on multiple levels: societal collapse, economic collapse, intellectual collapse, loss of ability to think. All of these things are taking place right now. And people are pretty much clueless to what's really going on. But we're going to talk about some of these difficult things this morning. And let me just say this. Even now, more than ever, you need the PulseWave reports. You're going to need it because what's coming to the US of A is manufactured. It's being done on purpose. It is not happening organically. And you need to be aware of that as well. All right. This is all manufactured crises. All right. Manufactured crises, meaning that it could have been avoided. Manufactured means that individuals have decided and taken it upon themselves that this is what we're doing. All right. Now, a while back, I mentioned a few things to you, and I brought it up again recently. And I said, are we witnessing a shift in money, a shift in finance? Everything's going digital, everything's going on the blockchain, et cetera, et cetera. But I was wondering, in the process of that, are we at a crossroads where precious metals will no longer be looked at as currencies, but instead as commodities? So for whatever, multiple purposes that we use gold and silver for, is that going to be where it remains in the future? Now, we know historically over thousands of years, gold and silver has always been considered money. All right. And has maintained that reputation coming here into the 21st, and I'm sure into the 22nd century. But is there a shift, though? Is Bitcoin and altcoins going to take the place of gold and silver? Is gold and silver being relegated to obscurity when it comes to finance? Is gold and silver not getting the love that it should be getting at this time? Just think about it. We now, in certain parts of the world, we have vending machines that will, take your crypto. You can pay for a sandwich at certain places with crypto. But you can't do that with gold and silver. And you have to ask yourself a question, why is that? Because I think that the powers that be a long time ago figured out that when you have a scarce resource with alternative uses, the only way to truly control that is if you control the resource itself and access to it. And if you can monitor who has it. That's always been a problem with fiat currencies or any physical currency. But when you go digital, not only can you track and trace the money, but you know exactly where it has been and where it's going and who's receiving it and who's sending it. And as a governmental body, you can control that flow. You can control that chain of custody and you can cut it off. With the push of a button, you can turn things off. You can't do that with precious metals. You can't control who has it. You don't even know who has it. Someone could have, $1 million worth of gold bullion buried in their backyard. You wouldn't be able to know that. There are different ways to hide things, but if it's digital, it can't be hidden. It's out in the open and it can be tracked and monitored. So, are we seeing a shift? Is the market telling us something with gold and silver? Are people starting to move on from precious metals? Now, there was some chatter last week about silver being the next GameStop. And we saw an explosive move, a $3, $4 run, only to collapse there soon thereafter. And so when you take a look at where SLV is trading at as of Friday's close and where it's trading at today, SLV is only up 48 pennies, 48 cents, trading at $25.43. So it's not on fire. It's not at $500. See, remember, when GameStop started its acceleration, it started off at 20 bucks. Well, silver this morning's at 25, so it has a $5 head start than GameStop had. Normally, if we were comparing apples to apples, silver should already be at $500 an ounce or more because it's a futures contract and you have leverage in there. So it should have moved at least 5 times as much as GameStop, maybe even 10 times as much because, again, this is a leveraged instrument. Maybe even 50 times because, technically speaking, in most commodity futures contracts, your leverage is like 50 to 1. So why isn't silver up 500% or 5,000%? You need to ask yourself that question. If the rumor was true, then shouldn't SLV be over $500 today? It only took a week for GameStop to do what it did, so why is that not happening in silver? You must be honest with yourself, and you have to ask yourself that question. You may not like the answer that you get, though. Is the market no longer truly, from a historical perspective, truly bullish on precious metals in general? And if so, should you be? Now, keep in mind, because I know I can feel the hate coming, I'm not talking about physicals. We're going to deal with that later on. I'm talking about the paper market right now. Paper market, PAPER, commodity futures, and the ETFs. That's what we're talking about right now. Commodity futures and ETFs. We're not talking about mining stocks. We're talking about commodity futures and the commodity ETFs, GLD, SLV. That's all we're talking about. We're talking about paper. So don't panic yet. You don't need to panic yet. Now, this was talked about on Bloomberg a week ago when Joe Weisenthal touched on this. And I have to admit, he made some valid points. Okay. He said that it seems like we're not talking enough about the fact that gold has been tanking ever since the Georgia runoff election. Dems in complete control of the government equal higher deficits equals bad for gold. And if you look at the chart performance of the gold, you have to agree that there's something to see there. Now, the reason why people were kind of up in arms and didn't like it is because many investors own precious metals, whether it be physical stacking or have some investments in the paper market, and they own mining stocks or whatever. All right. More Austrian economics, okay, and they tend to believe that the continued government spending will lead to hyperinflation, etc. And they're not wrong. All right, from a pure theoretical perspective, that those are facts. And maybe we will be seeing that in the short future here as we witness the collapse of the USA. But if that's the case, then that's another reason to come on over to PulseWave Trading, because I teach you how to operate in the paper market so you don't have to liquidate your physical holdings, during a cash flow crisis. So the question is, what is the market trying to tell us? Now, in all fairness, gold is rallying rather nicely this morning, and silver has a nice little rally going on too, and I'm very thankful for it. I'm benefiting from that this morning, but I'm beginning to wonder if it's truly going to last, or are we going to see a end of day reversal crash into the close kind of thing, or a straight up reversal come on Tuesday? I have to tell you, I am concerned at the moment about that. Now, again, you have to be fair. You have to look at things that, what they are, take what the market's giving you. Right now, according to the algo charts, gold is still in a bear market. And this morning, we're experiencing a bear market rally in gold. I cannot ignore that. Silver, though, on the algo chart, is in a bull market. And so it is rallying and doing what it's supposed to do. I think it's going to try to test or push back up toward that $30 level. And hopefully it'll smash right through it. But if it fails, is gold just waiting for silver to catch up? Ladies and gentlemen, I am concerned that within the next 30 days, this will be the headlines. Gold trading at $1,400 and silver trading at $21. I'm hoping that that is not the case. But if it is, then you have to look at it from what it is. All right? I'm just saying. Is the market trying to tell us something? I don't know. But if you take a look at the performance in the short term, GDX is down almost 12%, and GDXJ is down over 12%. And that's those are just facts. What do you do about that? How do you deal with that? What about UGL, down almost 13%? It's another ETF. I'm just saying, you got to look at what's really going on here. And you got to ask a question. We were supposed to see a short squeeze in silver, but that didn't happen. Now, one major argument about this, and I have to talk about this too, it could be that because of the continued manipulation of said market, that it's harder to do a GameStop on gold and silver because of Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank shorting it and keeping it, from going as high as it really could go. These are historical facts that have been brought out in the news. So we know that the gold and silver markets have been artificially kept low. We know this. We know that the banks have been working at the behest of the central banks. So we know this. So perhaps that is what's been keeping the market at bay like it's been for the past decade. So again, these are just things to think about as we're moving forward and moving away from tradition. All right? We're moving away from these extremes. And the question is, why? Why? I'm just saying. You need to think about this. Remember how I exposed before it became the norm how CNBC was trying to reach the younger audience? CNBC used to be very Wall Street at one point, very old school. And then all of a sudden they said, let's become hip. And they start playing hip hop music. During the commercial breaks, you know what they played? They played Beethoven and Bach and classical music. There was never hip hop even talked about or mentioned on CNBC or any business channel. Business channels were historically stuffy and serious at all times. Now it's all hip hop. As I'm talking to you, they just finished. They're playing a rap video right now. Someone made a video about SPACs, SPAC Dream music video. All right. So again, this is what you see on CNBC. They're talking about the young people, trying to reach the young people. Ridiculous. They are trying to become trendy. They've been doing this for over a decade now as well. And I must tell you, it's corny. And it lets you know that they have been controlling society with their visual antics for a long time, perpetuating certain stereotypes and realms of thought. When they want to keep a society controlled, the first thing they do is they have to get you on controlled substances, which affects your mental acuity. The next step is to constantly bombard you and berate you with sound bites. And that's why if you take a look at the mainstream media, they're all talking and speaking to you from the same teleprompter, the same exact script. How many collage videos do you have to see of all the channels saying the same thing word for word? And still no one's waking up and say, hey, that's not right. It has become normative to you because they showed it to you over and over again. They're throwing it in your face that you're in a controlled lab, basically, and this is what's happening. They're feeding you what they want you to believe. And groupthink is the order of the day. You're not allowed to have individual thought. All individual thought is ostracized and attacked harshly and openly, so you will know not to do it again. This is why things that should be known to you are not. And the human psyche has been beaten down to such a point that even when truth is presented, it cannot be tolerated. It cannot be tolerated. The programming has been so specific, so precise, so ingrained that even if you get people alone by themselves and you talk to them one-on-one, they cannot process truth or facts. They can only operate in groupthink. That's it. No critical thinking allowed. No critical thinking will be tolerated. This is where we are. That's why I do believe that your boy, Rod Serling, when he had the Twilight Zone thing going on, he had an episode once, and I forget the title of the episode, but in this episode of the Twilight Zone, we're talking about the real original Twilight Zone, the black and white 1960s Twilight Zone. All right. In this particular episode, which is like one of my favorite episodes, these outlaws from the Wild Wild West, you know, they had caught themselves a lick, and they had scored all this gold, and so they buried it in a mountain. And I forget all the particulars, but just suffice it to say, they were bought, like they stepped into a wormhole. They stepped into the future to like our time period. And they were stranded in the desert trying to get to civilization. Someone passed them by and they offered to give them all this gold, you know, if they could take them to civilization, give them a glass of water, do something to help them. And the person looked at him and was like, "What is that you're holding in your hand?" He's like, "What do you mean? It's gold. We got millions of it. And we'll gladly give you. I'll give you $100,000 right now if you let me have a drink of water and take me to civilization, so we can survive and get us out this desert." And dude said, "Is this a joke? Are you kidding? Basically, am I on camera or something? Is this candid camera?" I'm paraphrasing, of course. And he said, "What's going on here? I don't understand." And the bandit was just taken aback because he's like, "Why this person's for real? This person's really don't know what I'm holding in my hand. I'm showing them all this gold." And dude looked at him and said, "You don't know gold when you see this is gold, man." He said, "Oh, that's what that is. I heard about that." Man, gold hasn't been used in our society for like 100 years. That's worthless what you're holding in your hand. And it ended basically like that. And so your bandits was like just blown away. They didn't know, like the mind was just blown at that point. Because he was just told that his gold was worthless. It had no value in the future. And the day and time that they were doing is our time period. I think a lot of things that Rod was hitting on back then, though that it was controversial then, and probably people laughed at it, but when you look now, in hindsight, it was actually kind of prophetic because he touched on something back then that you would have never imagined would be possible, but it was possible. It is now possible. And I think that's what we're beginning to see here. And I don't think it's organically happening. I think it's being made to happen. Just like last week, I explained to you too, there's a difference between shortages and scarcity. Those are two different things. Scarcity is natural. All right, God ordained, if you will. But shortages is man-made. That's a man-made thing. Companies have been using the shortage technique now for years. Case in point, PlayStation 5. Now they'll tell you, well, we underestimated the level of demand for the machines, or we just couldn't keep up the production. We just couldn't make enough, and we promised to get you more of these out. No, stop it. They've been playing this game for years, folks. Years. And it's not just Sony. Nintendo been doing it. Every company on the planet has been doing it. There's no company that's not doing it, or hasn't done it, or hasn't attempted to create shortages. Because it is a technique. It is an actual technique and strategy in sales where you're trying to create demand artificially. You want to artificially create demand. which is kind of stupid because if you already have a popular product that people want and can't wait for the next one to come out, you don't need to create artificial shortages. You don't need to create demand where it's already demand. This was taking things, pushing the envelope to the next level, led on by sheer greed. Just greed. Well, every time we drop this widget, we sell 1 million of them. Every time we drop the new widget, because we have 1 million dedicated customers that love our widget. But I think we can get 2 million customers to do it. This is what we'll do. Instead of pushing out 1 million widgets when we drop the new widget, let's just put out, let's say, 1,000. But won't this make our customers angry? No, it'll make them want it even more. We'll make them think that it is an honor and a privilege for you to part with your money and pay us for our new widgets. It's not a right. It's a privilege to buy our widgets. We make the customer believe that we're not empowered to them, but they bow down to us. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is the okie doke. They create artificial shortages to play mental gymnastics with you, to make people enraged to the point where they believe that it is actually their privilege to part with their money with a particular company to receive their goods. And it has worked, and it continues to work, so they continue to do it. How many of you have stood in line for hours or days trying to cop something? Whether it be concert tickets, movie tickets, the new iPhone, the new PlayStation, the new Xbox, whatever, the new Jordans, you fill in the blank. How many of you have stood in line like that? I remember back in the day, back in 1977, when the Star Wars movie dropped, people were standing in line for up to as long as a week. I will never forget it. Do you guys also remember? Some of you guys don't remember that. You're too young. So let's bring something up to your speed that you do remember. Do you remember not so long in the distant past where car dealerships figured out that they could create more artificial demand for their vehicles by giving away free vehicles to whoever could keep their hand or appendage on the car the longest? Do you remember that? People have short-term memories, don't they? They don't remember that. And that was happening everywhere. And people were willing to not lose, so they came up with sophisticated ways to stay attached to the car, to the point that they started having ties, because a week would go by and the person would still be held on to the car. Yeah. People devise ways where they could stay attached to the car, because whoever detached from the car had to be eliminated. So they figured out the best way to stay connected to the car. And they had, support, just like a NASCAR. They had a support. They had a pit crew. The pit crew would bring them what they needed, water, clothes, whatever, food, so that they didn't have to detach from the car. Yeah, people were getting free cars. They were willing to stay attached to a car for a week so they can get that free car, doing whatever it took to get these goods. People standing in line for a movie or a concert for a week just to get tickets, just to part with your money, because it was an honor and a privilege to attend this concert, to watch this movie, this film, or to get this new iPhone or these new Jordans. Ladies and gentlemen, do you recall the Black Fridays of the past where people were killed, trampled to death, stampeded to get garbage? They were buying garbage. Let's be honest. Most of the stuff that you got, you took it back. Returns. You ever seen Walmart's returns after Christmas? Ridiculous. Sometimes the lines will be wrapped around the building to return stuff. I kid you not. That's because people have been successfully psychologically manipulated to such a degree that they don't even realize what they are doing. They have made the corporation their lord and master without even realizing it. They got you worshiping things, stuff. And now it is switched no longer to a consumer propaganda message, but now a government propaganda message where you are looking to government to solve all of your ills. And they use the media to blast you with these propagandized talking points. They get you to believe what they're saying because they parade in front of you people who look like you and may even talk like you. So it must be true. Let's bring out this African-American individual here who is a PhD from Harvard. We'll bring out the black intellectual, and he will tell you why reparations are a great thing, a fantastic thing. And he will also tell you about your white privilege. And he will tell you that everything that has gone wrong in your life is because of pale-faced white men. So then you get a lot of people, they parade more people like him in front of the television. And it says, yes, what he is saying is true. He is a deep thinker. He just came out with a new book. And it's called Woke Folk. And unless you agree with this, then you're not black, you're Uncle Tom, you're a sellout, and you ain't woke. You ain't woke folk. And people say, yeah, this guy is so deep. Hey, what do I know about it? I know nothing. He's a professor. He has a doctorate. He must know what he's talking about. He's a professor at a prestigious university. He must know what he's talking about. And then they bring out more people that look like you. Oh, here's a Latina. She's from Mexico. Obviously, she knows what she's talking about as well. She's speaking fluent Spanish. And guess what? She also has a doctorate. And she's a professor. And she just came out with a book called Give Me Back My Land. Talking about how the white man stole their land. How Mexico was not just Mexico, but part of the United States. And that they own California and everything here. From East Coast to West Coast, their property. And it's called Give Me Back My Land. So she must be right. And everything she's saying is right. Therefore, they deserve reparations too. And then they parade another person in front of the screen that looks just like you from the intellectual sphere. He's Native American from whatever tribe, you fill in the blank. And he's saying, no, I take issue with my Latina sister. You say you had California. Well, actually, my people were in California before your people. Your people took California from my people. So it's really my people. Therefore, Give Me Back My Land. Part 2 book was written by me. Everyone's saying, yes, he must be telling the truth. He does look like an Indian chief. And he does look very ethnic. And he does have a PhD, and he's also a professor at a prestigious university. Therefore, we should listen to him. He knows what he's saying. And on and on and on, etc., etc., etc. But here's what they're not telling you. See, they want to push the emotional buttons. They want to tell you that all the problems in your life is because you have been discriminated against. It's because of racism and white privilege. Racism and white privilege. Where it has nothing to do with history. Your problems have nothing to do with history. It doesn't mean anything about history. It doesn't matter what people did to your ancestors. What people did to your ancestors is not the problem. The problem is you. Once again, let me repeat that. The problem is not what people did to your ancestors. The problem is you. The white man this, the white man that. So let me get this straight. So it's the white man's fault. So white privilege and racism caused you to shoot your brother in the hood because you wanted to take over his drug spot and expand your drug enterprise. So that's because of the white man. That's white privilege. That's slavery. It's not your fault. It's not you that did it. The devil made you do it. Really? So the sister tricking on the corner, that's white privilege because her ancestors were enslaved. That's what's making her trick on the corner. So the brother running all kind of scams and pyramid schemes and beating people out of their money, their hard-earned money. That's not him. That's white privilege. And because his ancestors were enslaved, that's why this is happening. Really? Stop the madness. The problem is not what people did to your ancestors. The problem is you. We're not dealing with these issues because guess what? People don't want to hear the truth. They can't hear the truth. It burns them. They can't hear the truth. It'll light them on fire. They can't hear the truth. They have to run from it. No, you don't understand it. We need these reparations because again, the problem is not what people did to your ancestors. The problem is you. You, the choices and decisions you make determine your outcome. Let's keep it 100. When were you enslaved? When were you enslaved? Answer, never. Well, I experienced systematic racism. Let me get this straight. So you have a PhD from Harvard, but yet you're saying here that you've experienced systematic racism. Really? So then how did you obtain your PhD from Harvard? I don't understand. Well, you don't understand. Black people have been kept down. Really? So how is Oprah Winfrey a billionaire? How is Bob Johnson a billionaire? How is Tyler Perry a billionaire? How's Puffy basically a billionaire? At one point, Suge Knight was on his way to becoming a billionaire. Do you know how many black billionaires there are? And black multimillionaires? Do you know how many Latina billionaires there are? And multimillionaires? Do you know how many Native American billionaires there are? Or Native American multimillionaires? The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Stop it. The problem is not what people did to your ancestors. The problem is you and the choices and decisions that you have made. Let's keep it 100. Nobody told you to stab them fools. You did that. That's why you in jail. Nobody told you to get totally wasted and then get behind the wheel of a car and drive and run down them people and cause an accident and kill that baby and the mama in the car when you hit them head on because you was drunk and passed out at the wheel. That has nothing to do with racism or white privilege. That had to do with idiocy. You made a choice, a decision, a conscious moral decision. You can't blame people for what you do. You're doing that. You're doing that. Nobody told you to have all those children out of wedlock. You chose that. When we talk about the issues plaguing certain ethnic communities, if you will, you got to look at each case by case basis on an individual basis. You cannot paint with a broad brush because the problems that are plaguing the inner cities is complex with multiple moving parts. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to choices. You have a choice. If a young lady decides that she is going to have 12 kids by 12 different baby daddies and never been married, she is already condemning herself to a life of poverty and hardship. Sometimes you make choices and decisions that make your life harder. An individual decides to pursue a life of crime, and then they go to prison. You have made a choice now that's going to make your life a lot harder, especially when you come out of prison, because now you have a record. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? You made a choice and a decision to drop out of high school, drop out of sixth grade, drop out of whatever. Then you must live with the choices and the consequences that follow them. Every actions have consequences, whether it be good or bad. But we make choices, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not get it twisted. No one told you to shoot them dudes. No one told you to cut that fool. No one told you to lay down with that dude. No one told you to lay down with that chick. You impregnated that chick. No one made you impregnate that chick. You chose to impregnate that chick. You had unprotected intercourse with her. Now you must deal with the consequences. Man, but she's so much full of drama. She crazy. Was she crazy when you laid down with her? But you understand, he beats me. Did he beat you before he impregnated you? Yeah, but that's different. No, it's not. I thought I could. No, you thought wrong. But I thought if I just gave him a son, then no, you thought wrong. Again, you made choices and decisions, and they have consequences and outcomes. And now you want to be bailed out. You want society to bail you out. That's all I'm saying. A lot of things, a lot of hardships can be avoided if you made better choices and decisions. Now, those that are proponents of education will say, well, if you just had more education, no, it has nothing to do with education. Well, if you know better, you do better. That is also not true. Some of the worst human atrocities in history were done by people that have high intellect and have been to university and may have even graduated with honors. Let's not forget, at one point, Adolf Hitler was Man of the Year in Time magazine. Let's not forget that. Let's not forget that. Education has never been the issue. It's the quality and the substance of the education that matters. Fill a person's head full of facts means nothing. Again, it is the quality, not the quantity of the information that you are receiving. Education You have to define that. Education's the key. What type of education are you talking about? Because right now, the American public school system is full of information, but it's propaganda information. That's why people are graduating high school and still can't read. That's why people are graduating from college and universities dumb as bricks. Yeah. Do you know why cults like to recruit on university campuses and not high school campuses? There's a reason for that, ladies and gentlemen. You ever thought about that? Why college campuses? Why not high school campuses? Why not elementary school campuses? Think about it for a minute. It will occur to you. There's a reason for that. America is suffering the results of its decisions. Chief among them was the decision to turn its back on God. This is the result. You chose Satan. You chose the devil. Therefore, you are going to reap the devil. Speaking of reaping the devil, let's talk about what is happening right now, and no one wants to talk about it. We have no modern precedent for this, ladies and gentlemen. The American murder rate has soared 30% in 2020. 30%. Nationwide. That's not just, oh, that's just Chicago. Oh, that's just DC. Oh, that's just New York. Oh, that's just Philadelphia. No. Period. Let's talk about, oh, well, that's systemic racism. That's white privilege. Really? Really? So let's get this straight. The poor man from the hood says, well, you don't understand, man. I was born poor. We ain't had no food. We ain't had no shoes. The only way for me to get out was to pick up a gun and start robbing people, join this gang, peddle these drugs, shoot them dudes on the corner, stab that fool over there. Okay, so that's your lane you went. Well, can you explain to me how other people who born in the same neighborhood you were born into made it through college, got degrees, and are now making six figures and living in the suburbs? They came from the same block you came from. Some even lived in your same building you lived in. Explain yourself. Some are even poorer than you. So why did the racism, the white privilege only affect you and not the rest of your comrades? You have no answer for that, do you? Because this whole white privilege and systemic racism is a lie. You have to blame someone else for your failures. Many Americans probably aren't surprised to learn that 2020 was one of the most violent years in recent memory. A solid break with the decades-long trend of lower national crime rates, with exceptions among the bombed-out Rust Belt cities of Baltimore, in addition to Black Lives Matter marches across the nation that enabled waves of looting, along with more than a dozen killed. 2020 was, generally speaking, a year of unrest as millions of Americans trapped inside their homes lashed out because they were propagandized and brainwashed and programmed to do just that. Oh, and don't forget, paid off by George Soros and other foundations. Yeah, they got paychecks that day for that. Now, a wave of headlines warning about the spike in crime has now been confirmed. The U.S. murder rate saw a historic increase in 2020 versus 2019, with more than 1.2 thousand additional killings year over year in a sample of 34 American cities. The biggest being New York City, the smallest being Norfolk, Virginia. Norfolk? 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 VA? Ain't nothing in Norfolk. You might as well say that this happened in Candyland or something. Norfolk? Keep in mind, this isn't the official FBI report on crime data, which will no doubt include a fair bit of massaging, as government reports like to do this often to soften the blow. The report, cited by Fox News and other mainstream media outlets, was published by the National Commission of COVID-19 and Criminal Justice, a nonprofit group created in July of last year that includes former AG Loretta Lynch as co-chair. The coronavirus pandemic, continued incidents of police violence, and rising homicide and violent crime rates each possess massive policy changes in their own right, but the interplay between them creates even more difficult decisions for policymakers, the report said. Despite this difficulty, leaders at all levels of government should take bold action in responding to all three crises. According to an analysis of crime data collected from the cities noted above, homicide rates jumped by 30% from 2019 to 2020, while gun assault and aggravated assault rates climbed 8% and 6% respectively. And while crime typically follows a seasonal cycle, with murder rates rising in the summer and falling in the winter, last year crime was up during every month compared with the prior year. Now, for you sociologists out there, you recall from your studies that the reason why crime rates are higher in the summer is because of the heat, and it causes aggravation when people are hot and frustrated. That's what they say. Now, homicide rates were higher during every month of 2020 relative to rates from the previous year. The report described the annual 30% surge as a large and troubling increase that has no modern precedent. And yet, they were still calling to abolish the police. In addition to the three main violent crimes listed above, murder, gun assault, and aggravated assault, the report also included rates of domestic violence, which were said to be up last year as people were confined to their homes. While rates of violent crime increased, the report also found other crimes like motor vehicle thefts also rose year over year, while some crimes like drug offenses, larcenies, non-residential burglaries, and residential burglaries all declined. Isn't that interesting? They all declined. Largely a factor of people being in their homes more frequently, along with a pullback on certain quality of life crimes like drug offenses in the wake of the BLM movement. Now, looking ahead, crime analysts suspect that rates of the most violent crimes could rise as some murders are temporarily suppressed due to limited opportunities for offenders and victims to interact. But as COVID-19 rates finally start to fall after the deadliest month for the virus on record, will the reopening trigger a surge in violence? Or maybe the powers that be can use the threat of unrest as just one more excuse to keep restrictions in place for longer, generating massive profits for American mega corporations while small businesses go out of existence. That is what we are seeing, ladies and gentlemen. Again, you can't make this stuff up. It's right here in your face. But you don't hear too many people talking about it. Why not? Why not? What's going on? Now, there's a lot to be concerned about because we are looking at the collapse of society as you know it. You know it, I know it, they know it, blah, blah, blah. So now the next thing is going to be, where do we go from here? Hold on one second. All right. So once again, we have to think clearly about these issues that we're seeing right now because there's a lot at stake. Now, I don't have a lot of time to go into some of these other areas that I would like to go into, so we'll have to save it. Stay tuned for tomorrow for our continuation because we do have quite a bit to talk about. Now, for this week, I'll leave you with this. I believe that silver will break $30 this week just by looking at how things are moving. I don't know if it will be able to sustain that, but I do believe that it is going to take out $30. I really do. I think that is going to play out. Don't ask me why it's going to play out. I just have a feeling that it's going to play out. All right. The question mark that I have right now is what's going to happen with the stock indexes. Those are the real concerns for me right now. What's going to happen with the stock indexes? So I'm watching those. I got my eye on it. I would say those are probably the biggest question marks for the week. Bitcoin is doing exactly what I told you it was going to do. So that is what it is. But right now, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave you with this. The Russell is the strongest of the indices right now. It is definitely the strongest. So I'm looking to see if that will be able to pull the rest of the market with it to the upside, or is something else going on? Furthermore, I expect all things being equal, Bitcoin does have the potential to see 50,000. I think we could see 50,000 this week in Bitcoin. Just all things being equal, I do see that there is a strong potential for that to happen, but it's still at a crossroads because it also has the potential to come down and fill those gaps I was telling you about. The Bitcoin futures has a gap that it has not completed. It is not filled, so it could pull back on you. So I just want to put that out there. I talked about that in my last end of day report. All right, so keep all that with you. All right, y'all know what it is, man. Smash that like button for me. Remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So remember to take what you can and give nothing back. And I am out. Peace.